Welcome to Praying Through the Bible, number 30, Exodus 16, a prayer that is not a prayer. A prayer that is not a prayer. Have patience, and we all might learn an alarming but needed lesson, especially for those days when our cup runneth over, our cup of complaints, that is. On the 15th day of the second month, after being powerfully freed from bondage, Israel impatiently complains to Moses. Exodus 16, 1 through 3. Running low or completely out of their Egyptian food provisions, they lose faith. Their food and faith covered is bare. Their faith is in their food and not their freedom fighter. Israel's argumentativeness reaches irrational levels. No longer seeing their barbarous past pain honestly, they see a warped version. Here are three ways their complaints becloud their blessings. 1, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in the land of Egypt, chapter 16, verse 3. They make their craving for food a craving for death, which destroys their faith in the future. 2, when we sat by pots of meat and all ate all the bread we wanted, chapter 16, verse 3. That's their new craving. Does that sound like something Pharaoh allowed them to do? Real events can become false memories. Just 2.5 months later, these ingrates make slavery sound like a vacation. Instead of give me liberty or give me death, Israel whimpers, give me bread and I'll give you my freedom. 3, instead you brought us into this wilderness to make this whole assembly die of hunger. Again, chapter 16, verse 3. Their belligerent behavior blames Moses for what they asked for. They make their rescue a kidnapping. With clouded memories, God appears to them in a cloud, chapter 16 and verse 10. This is to answer their prayer that is not a prayer. Okay, so what is a prayer that is not a prayer? Defined simply, a prayer is talking to God, with God hearing. Although Israel is talking to Moses, please notice, 1, God hears their complaints, chapter 16, verses 7, 8, 9, and 11. 2, God hears their complaints about him, chapter 16, verses 7 and 8. Remember yesterday's prayer devotional? That when we complain to God, we are actually complaining about God. 3, God answers their complaints, chapter 16, verses 4 and 8. So a prayer that is not a prayer is me complaining and God hearing. This marks the beginning, Exodus chapter 16, of Yahweh providing manna for these ingrates for the next 40 years, chapter 16, 35. Every day for 40 years, they witnessed the miraculous. Every day, God can't do enough or do it right or do it soon enough for them. And although Israel verbally gripes to Moses and Aaron and not God, not only God, but Moses considers it a protest against God. Who are we? Your complaints are not against us, but against the Lord, chapter 16, verse 8. Israel is guilty of prayer transference, that is, verbally redirecting ill feelings about God to another. When unhappy people complain about us, are they really complaining about God? Here are 4 lessons. 1, God hears when I am not technically praying. I already knew that, but reminders are necessary. Wisdom dictates reconsidering my ill-tempered, non-praying words as prayers, and then maybe I'll hold my tongue. 2, complaining and grumbling are signs of distrust and dissatisfaction in God. That's an uncomfortable thought. 3, complaining against God's servants is complaining against and about God. How we treat others, God says, that is how we are treating him. How often during the day do our lips say things we would never pray? 4, despite all this, manna, which means what is this, or manhu, manna in Hebrew, chapter 16, verse 15. Despite all this, God gives them manna. Consider manna their daily grace. Here's our prayer challenge. Consider our complaints just within the last 24 hours, whether about not finding our favorite snack, our health, others, or whatever preoccupies our minds. Pray for contentment and honesty. Pray for people God has put into our lives, that we will not wrongfully accuse them, and pray that we will appreciate our spiritual freedom as worth more than any of our complaints. This has been Praying Through the Bible, number 30, Exodus 16. This has been a blessing to you. Please share. Feel free to comment below. Thank you very much.